So hello, everyone. Welcome to Kernels. Today is kind of a special Kernels. This is, I'm joined by some members of the Cedar Rapids Public Library team, support team, and I am Samantha Bouwers, consultant for continuing ed at the State Library of Iowa. We've got Charity Tyler. I was forgetting your last name. I have a good friend named Charity. Her last name is not Tyler. And Susan McDermott. We'll introduce them in just a second, but let me tell you a little bit about Kernels. Kernels is an ongoing series of short videos from the State Library of Iowa. Each installment is a small pop, get it, kernel, of professional development that gets right to the core of a library program, service, or methodology in a public library. We've got in-practice people discussing their work so that other in-practice people can learn from their experience. We have them on our YouTube channel, all the kernels, so make sure you check them out. And they're also in Iowa Learns. If you want half an hour of CE credit, you can watch them there. I don't think we'll have any attachments or anything as we go today. This is going to be a conversation between Charity and Susie and myself. Charity, to introduce her for just a minute here, is the immediate past president of United for Libraries and serves on the Intellectual Freedom and Public Policy and Advocacy Committee of that group. And she's also the executive director of the Cedar Rapids Public Library Foundation, and is here to tell us a little bit about that. And then we have Susie McDermott, and Susie is a board member in Cedar Rapids Public Library. And Susie, this summer you also won a citation from the American Library Association. Is that correct?
That is correct. That was very exciting.
Congratulations on that, and thank you for your service. And you got to attend the American Library Association conference, is that right?
That may be the best part of it. It was a wonderful experience.
Yeah. Did you enjoy DC and the swampy weather we had this summer out there?
You know, it was so good, and we were inside in a beautiful air-conditioned facility, so it really never came into play very much.
Yeah, you could spend a lot of time in that building and never go outside with all the tunnels and skywalks and everything they had there. It was a nice facility, I agree. So again, congratulations to you on that award from ALA, and I'm glad you enjoyed the conference. So Charity and Susie, both from Cedar Rapids, Can you guys give me a little bit of an overview how the Cedar Rapids Public Library has these different groups working together and how they all kind of come together to support the library? So Charity with the foundation, Susie with the board, of course there's staff and friends, and Cedar Rapids is a big town. So how do you guys kind of stay in lockstep? How do you support the library?
Susie, you want to go first?
Oh, Susie.
Yeah, sure, I'd be glad to. When I was first involved, I was involved with the Friends, actually, and there was not a foundation at that time, or there was an inactive foundation. They owned some property and managed that. That was about it. And so we've had, the basic relationship has been between the Friends and the trustees. And then as the foundation became developed, and the Friends were a traditional Friends group. It's like Friends groups throughout Iowa, I'm sure, doing the same kinds of things, doing book sales, staffing things when requested, and that sort of an operation. But then the foundation really took off, and Charity can explain how that's different from the Friends in Cedar Rapids.
Yeah, so we have a Friends foundation. It's also a 501c3, like most Friends groups are, and we have professional staff. So I am full-time employee. I have another full-time employee that helps with development, and I have a part-time admin that does data entry and things. And so we tend to fund innovation. And so that's one of the things that sets us apart a little bit from Friends. Friends is funding for our organization. Friends is funding the literacy programs that the library provides, and their mission is focused on literacy, but they're 100% volunteer led. So they still have a board. Samantha, as far as that communication, one of the things that I think we've found really help is making sure that I, as the foundation director, am attending both the Board of Trustees meetings and reporting out to those meetings. So Susie and the fellow trustees, they hear a report from the foundation. They also hear a report from the Friends every month. And then I and the library director both attend the Friends board meetings so that we understand what's going on and they can ask us questions. And then I also have 3 Board of Trustees members on my library foundation board. So there really are lots of overlaps. I have regular one-on-one meetings with our library director to make sure we're in lockstep. And I'm in constant communication with our Friends president as well to help promote their book sales, but also to, ask for support or guidance when we do have things come up.
Samantha, one of the places where it gets sticky for groups, and it did for Cedar Rapids at one point in time, is where there isn't that communication, and where you have a friends group and they have a great idea and they start working on that, but they haven't communicated with the staff and they have no idea. Or if they had a foundation, if they have no idea if the foundation is trying to solicit money from that same group. And so without the communication, and I think that happens a lot of times, it really can get sticky. So as Charity said, sitting and communicating regularly is tremendously important.
So I'm hearing you say that. I love that about the communication, that to say, I'm reaching out to this group in town for a donation, and maybe you should wait a year or whatever. So communication and overlap, but then I also have heard some kind of elements here that like guardrails, not quite, sort of stay in your lane. So what have you guys done to help the different groups sort of find their niche and really lean into where they can be most successful?
Do you want me to take that one, Susie?
Sure.
All right. So when I began 7 years ago, I was the first full-time foundation director post capital campaign after the library rebuilt the building after the flood of 2008. So I came on board also finding my ground, but one of the things that was important to understand is, and this is an exaggerated example, but we had previously had some staff members soliciting sponsorships from corporations for Summer Dare, which is our summer learning program. We also had the Friends group that was soliciting sponsorships from sometimes the same organization. And so we really had to set up some boundaries, or guardrails as we call them, as to how our funds raised within our library. It's not to say that our Friends group doesn't seek support from corporations, but we always talk about it. So, for instance, there was a bank that a library staff member was planning to ask $500 to provide some kitsch or something for a prize. And I was like, ooh, planning on asking them to sponsor one of our programs for 5,000. And can you, so trying to help them understand that I'm here to help them, and not that what was done in the past wasn't appropriate for the time, but making sure that we're not constantly communicating with one donor, whether it be an individual or corporation, and causing confusion, like we really don't know what we're doing or what they're funding and things like that. The other thing is making sure that we being the Friends president and me from the foundation, visit with our library director constantly to make sure that anything that we are funding or doing is aligned with the library strategic plan. We are not here to go out and start independent initiatives, per Susie's comment about making sure that you talk with the staff and making sure that they know what we're doing as well. But for us in our organization, because we have a foundation, it adds a little bit of a complication. But for smaller libraries in Iowa that might not have a foundation, it really is the same thing with the Friends group, working with the staff to make sure they're not making the same ask for different amounts. Sometimes it happens in the same month because all of these programs are coming up and everyone's pitching in to support it. So just making sure that the lines of communication are open and we're not stepping on each other's toes, but really finding a way to work together.
I think one of the ways that we really moved ahead in Cedar Rapids was when we decided that we needed to make sure there was regular annual education between the foundation, the friends, and the trustees. And when you have all of the heads of those groups, then you have a chance to talk about whose responsibilities are whose, and to do some real education, because there are always new people in new positions. And I think that has helped iron things out a great deal.
So when you mean education, what are some things that you might cover when you all get together to discuss something like that in an education kind of setting?
So one of the onboarding pieces that we use, we discuss our library support structure as kind of that three-legged stool. We have the board of trustees, the library foundation, and the friends, and we're all supporting the library, which is what is supporting the community. And there's a table essentially that talks about, this is the mission, this is the vision, this is the governing body, this is the staffing structure, just so that there are very clear distinctions between us. But the other thing that Susie's referencing is the Board of Trustees and DARA have implemented a joint, the tri-board meeting and training where new trustees, as well as current trustees, if they'd like a refresher, are invited to lunch. It's about an hour and a half, 90-minute lunch and learn, basically, where they hear from library foundation and friends, and all new board members really are required to attend so that they understand what each of the legs of the stool do and what our purpose is and how we work together.
So even as soon as that onboarding meeting, understanding your rails is an important part of how you serve on that board. I want to talk a little bit about any sort of how good communication and these good relationships have helped in any sticky situations that have come up in your library. And of course, one big one would be any book challenges perhaps that have come up. Susie, if you can address how the board has educated themselves on the board's role in that process. And then Charity, I'd also be interested to hear from you on how a board could use anything from United for Libraries to educate themselves on that.
Well, that certainly is a current issue. It's always been an issue, but it is really top of mind, I think, right now. And it certainly was at the conference in Washington, too, that I attended. There were a lot of sessions. And both from our experience and from listening to other libraries and other trustees, the most important thing that a board of trustees can do is have a good policy as to how you handle that kind of a situation. And for anybody that's watching and isn't sure if they have something like that in their policy manual, that's absolutely the very first thing I would do, because that's what gives you your guidance and helps you diffuse potentially difficult situations.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things we've done too, and Susie referenced the policies. I've actually taken those policies that the library trustees have in place and provided them to our foundation board members, because they are two library leaders and they're seen as library advocates, to make sure the foundation board members understand what are the policies as they are in the community and might have friends comment on a book challenge or an inappropriate book or a book that they would deem inappropriate, I should say. Mm-hmm. As far as United for Libraries, we've been very active in the last, I'd say 18 months, trying to create products online toolkits that any library can use. We chose specifically not to put these resources behind a membership paywall because we acknowledge that all libraries and library advocates need access to these tools. So if anyone would go to and Google United for Libraries Intellectual Freedom, there's a fighting censorship page and it has definitions. And that's something that I felt was very important because we in library world, we speak sometimes a very unique language that is not common language. It's not language that my husband uses in his workplace or my friends that I might have dinner with use in their workplaces or in their households. And so creating a dictionary, so to speak, the definitions of these words that we're using when we're talking about censorship and intellectual freedom and privacy. But it has a lot of other talking points. And it also references use your state's library to see what best practices and policies you have available. Because the state libraries are also such a great resource, but that is something that we're trying to follow up on. And we have some monthly learning lives and things that have addressed that as well that are available behind the membership payroll.
I absolutely love what you said a little bit ago about having sort of all members of your library support team aware of those policies. And one phrase that I use a lot is like education is empowerment. And so the more people tangential to your library are aware of those policies and informed on those policies, the conversations that they have in the grocery store checkout line or at that Kiwanis meeting or whatever it is are going to do a lot for community goodwill if they can speak intelligently about, well, here's why the library can't just ditch that book or isn't going to ditch that book. And I think, Susie, you talked about past boards you've served on and the role that education has played there, and that coming from the school board, you kind of brought that into the public library board as well.
I think that one of the things that really has helped as far as education for our board is that we go through our policy manual a third of it a year. And it really refreshes people's minds as to what is in there. And for new board members, it's invaluable information, though they may have heard it during orientation. Sometimes it takes more than one pass to really understand things. And though policy doesn't sound very exciting when you do it in small bites, it has been very well received, I believe.
And I also think as we're talking about, I like your analogy, Charity, of the three-legged stool and the library sort of being the seat that supports the community, but not functioning without all three legs of those stools, the step stool, excuse me. Susie, would you make a little argument that maybe the board's role is the front leg or a slightly meatier leg than the other two? How does the board sort of feed the three legs of the step stool?
Without the library and the trustees, you wouldn't have the other boards. So it's as simple as that. I mean, that's from where it all sprang. But by the same token, we can't exist in a very powerful way without all of the help that we have from both the foundation and from the Friends. Or if you were a smaller library, from the Friends and maybe a community committee. I mean, there are a lot of ways to be organized, but none of us can do it alone without the other support.
Mm-hmm.
The Library Foundation and the Friends Group, we exist to fund the strategic plan that has been identified by the library staff and the Board of Trustees. So Susie's exactly right. We don't exist without the trustees and their vision. And then the staff is executing, and we're here to fund those innovative programs.
So Susie, what would you say to a board member who's maybe just feeling like, I'm here to check a box. Someone told me I should be in public service, so here I am on the library board. I just want to, do my one meeting a month and go home and feel good about myself.
Well, I, that's kind of hard for me to understand because I've always been sort of all in. But I also think that when you're president of a board and there is someone that isn't as engaged as you would hope, you need to get to know them, or figure out a way to find what their passion in the whole, because they wouldn't be doing it if they didn't have some interest, certainly. And I think that's where you have to kind of work at it, but that is the responsibility of the president of the board of trustees.
Mhm.
It's like the chairman of any community organization. It isn't a staff person that can say you need, that has to come from peer to peer.
Mhm.
And staff can certainly help with it, but that's where it starts, I believe.
And Charity, I'm going to flip the question on its head a little bit for you as well. It seems like I've heard a few stories lately about friends and foundations that for one reason or another aren't too interested in spending the money they have on furthering library goals. I heard a story recently of a foundation that really had a dollar number in mind they wanted to get to before they would start spending, or maybe they're just not all bought into that plan. How could you encourage a friends or foundation to maybe start spending their resources to further the library?
What a great question. United for Libraries has a, I don't remember if it's an article or a blog or something, but it's When Friends Aren't Friends, is the title of it. And I would say that group are probably, going back to Susie's point, probably those boards of trustee leaders, along with staff, need to sit down with the leadership of the Friends or Foundation and revisit their mission and their purpose, and maybe even their articles of incorporation, if necessary, because these organizations and they're established with the sole purpose of supporting the programs and services and collection development efforts of public libraries. And while we exist to support them, the libraries need their support more than ever right now because everyone's facing budget cuts. Everyone's facing all of these challenges. There are staffing shortages and staffing issues, and the friends and the foundations are not there to what I call hoard money. Those donors have given their money with the 100% intent of supporting their library. And so they're not serving the donors if they're not giving money to that library to fulfill the needs of that library. And so, there's the nitty gritty and the legal definition, but it's also that donor intent and honoring donor intent to fund the library. So I guess those are the arguments that I would recommend.
That's a great encouragement. I'll have to look for that blog from United for Libraries as well. And is there anything else you guys want to say in closing? Maybe while you wrap up your thoughts, I'll just kind of summarize here, but really thankful to the examples that you guys give and how we talk about the library support team, which, no one exists in a vacuum. Like you said, Susie, the board doesn't exist without people to carry out the plan that they've set. The foundation doesn't exist without a vision that it needs to work towards. The staff, of course, would be in a big mess if they didn't have the direction and policies and such from the board. And then one player we haven't even talked about in any of this, of course, is the city, which creates another sort of environment under which all of this operates, as far as appointing board members and perhaps approving expenses or budget or some of that. So we don't do any of this alone. And so thanks to you guys and to the Cedar Rapids Public Library for the work that you do. Did you have anything else you wanted to add as we wrap up here to encourage boards or friends or foundations or any other members of the library team?
I really think that it's all about communication and it's all about education. And I think that if your board meetings are strictly business and there isn't an education component on it, you really are missing the boat. Because what people don't know, they can't support, they can't be excited about. And so it needs to be more than business as usual at those meetings. You need to take advantage of that and have some sort of an educational component, I believe, to be strong.
I completely agree. The other piece that I would say is advocacy. Advocacy is so important, and our volunteers, our volunteer board members cannot be effective advocates without that education, but we also need to remind them that they need to be advocating in the community. I loved your comment about, running into someone at the grocery store, or the coffee shop or whatnot, because they need to understand and feel equipped to answer that question or to correct some misinformation with accurate information. So making sure that your board members know that they are advocates. If they see city council members in the grocery store, thank them for funding your library, right? So make sure that they know the library is important to you, but training them and teaching them and helping them feel comfortable doing that on the spot is also, it's a key to library success, I really think.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again to both of you. Thanks to those who tuned in to Kernels today. You can earn half an hour of CE credit in Iowa Learns by clicking next in the upper right and doing that evaluation. My sincere thanks to Charity and to Susie for taking time out of their busy schedules to be with us today, and to the staff at the Cedar Rapids Public Library for sharing them with us as we bring this encouragement to all of our friends, foundation, and board members out there. So I think this is our first boardroom edition of the Kernels series. So I'm really thankful for your words of encouragement to both of you. So thanks again.